Hey guys, this is Scott with The Average Joe's Armory, channel for The Average Joe, and today we're going to be taking a look at the original over-under shotgun, the Browning B25 Superposed. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We recently put out a video on the Browning Satori, which is one of my favorite guns out there. And I had mentioned the Browning Superposed, and I said to myself, you know what, we really got to get our hands on one of these and do a video on it. So, hey, we did just that. Today we're going to be talking about the Browning B25 Superposed, which is one of the original over-under shotguns. It's become an American legend, and it's got a great history. I want to talk about that history today. I want to go into the different models and variations, and then I also want to talk about the gun that we have right here in front of us. So with that being said, let's dive right on in. So first off, to talk about the history of this gun, we do have to go back to the 20s and start with Mr. John Browning himself. Now, in 1922, or maybe a little bit before that, Mr. Browning was very familiar with the side-by-side shotgun. Those have been around in the 1800s, 1900s, they're still around today, and that was really the popular double-barrel shotgun, side-by-side. Well, he started thinking to himself, what if I took these barrels and put them on top of each other? How would that change the shootability? How would that change the accuracy? How would that change the mobility, overall? So he started toying around with the idea probably in the early 20s or so, and by 1922 he had started working on it, and 1923 he had already been starting to get some patents from it. Now, unfortunately, John Browning did die and pass in 1926. So even though that this was his last firearm design, he didn't see it through to the end. But luckily, his family was also very involved in the firearm world, and they were actually able to finish it up in 1927. Now, at this point, they had the design, they had the gun itself. Browning, the company, didn't actually start producing the gun until 1931. Now, that was pretty big because we had just, the Great Depression, just had hit in 1929. It wasn't probably the best time to launch a new gun design, so it didn't necessarily hit the ground running per se. However, they did start producing it in 1931. And that first run went all the way until 1940, and all those were produced in Belgium. Now, they did cease production, right around 1940, World War II, and at that point, all the guns were just 12 gauge. The very early ones were actually a double trigger, and then around 1933, they came out with the single trigger. That takes us to after the war in 1948, when they started up production again in Belgium at the Herstal Belgium factory. And that run went all the way until about 1986. Now, in 1949, they actually came out with the 20 gauge, and it wasn't until the early 60s when they introduced the 28 gauge and the 410. Now, I also want to talk a little about how it kind of phased out. So the Superposed was a huge hit, produced from 1931 all the way till 1986. However, in 1973, the Satori came out, the Browning Satori, which is basically a little bit more economical. Cut costs not only for the Browning company, but also for the customer. So with that being said, the Superposed kind of phased itself out. In fact, there's an interesting stat out there that basically between 1970 and 1976, the Superposed actually doubled in cost to manufacture. So you can imagine that definitely hit Browning's bottom line. Now, what's also interesting is that through the Browning Custom Shop, you can actually still order the Superposed. So you could still get your hands on a Superposed if you order it through that custom shop, though I can only imagine that there's probably a waiting list and it's probably very pricey, but nonetheless, very cool that you can get that Browning Superposed, the original B25. All right, so now I want to discuss a little bit about the grades. So they had the standard grade, which is basically the lightning grade. They also had the pigeon grade, the Diana grade, and the Midas grade. Now, with grading, really the big differences was cosmetics, right? So different stocks, different engraving, different checkering, things like that. an overall function of the gun was the same. It was literally just the cosmetics, how you're dressing up the gun, which made that difference. Now, when you take a look at those different grades, they get quite expensive as you get to the Diana and the Midas grade. But if you're looking for just a standard superposed, I definitely start with the standard or lightning. With that being said, they also had a lot of different disciplines like your trap, your skeet, your sporting clays, hunting. So if you dive down that rabbit hole, you'll find a whole bunch of different variations that they made of the superposed. Another thing that I want to talk about is kind of what were some of the options that you could get with these. You could look at anywhere from 26-inch barrels to 30-inch barrels. Later on, they also came out with the 32-inch barrels. Different choke sizes. Now these are all fixed chokes. It was before they had the interchangeable chokes. On top of that, they came with either the butt pad or the recoil pad. Depending on if you're doing competition shooting and you're putting hundreds of rounds through the guns in a day, you probably want to put a recoil pad on there. A lot of different options there in terms of grades and variations in the sort. That leads into another thing, is that they also made the B26 and the B27. So there's 3 different ones out there that I'm aware of. If there's more out there that I don't know of, please put that in the comments. But one really easy way to tell if you are shopping around for one would be the forend. On the B25, the original, the forend doesn't come off. Basically, if you were going to detach it, you would just detach it, slide it forward, and then fold the barrels down and detach it from the receiver. Whereas with a B26 or B27, the entire forend actually detaches from the gun. Very similar to like a modern day over-under shotgun. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. The B25s, specifically ones produced before 1970, are much more desirable than the later models and the B26 and B27. So keep that in mind if you're looking to get your hands on one or if you're collecting. Lastly, I want to kind of take some time to talk about this actual model that we have in front of us here today. This is, B25. It's a 1962. It is basically a lightning or standard grade model. It does have some very nice hand engraving on it, some very nice checkering on it. But other than that, it's pretty much, your standard run-of-the-mill over-under shotgun. We've got a mid-bead, we've got an end bead. It is sporting a 32-inch barrels, which is nice. Especially because those weren't really standard right out of the gates. It does have a very nice flat, wide rib, so you get a really nice sight picture. And in this case, we don't have any height or any rise in the comb on the stock. It's just a flat stock. So now for me, I'm 5'11", and this is basically a gun right out of the box, I guess you could say. It fits me really well when I mount it. It comes in a little bit under 8 pounds. So if you remember, the Satori that I had was 8 pounds, 1 ounce or so. This is just slightly under the 8 pounds. Specs online so that these are right around 8 pounds too. So there's going to be some variation, but overall you're right in that range, which is great for a 12 gauge. This one's got some beautiful engraving on it. It actually has a little picture of John Browning himself under the receiver, which I thought was pretty cool. And other than that, it's just a very comfortable gun. It reminds me a lot of the Satori. In fact, I'm really excited to take this gun out and shoot it. Hopefully there's a video coming in the future where we can maybe compare the Superposed and the Satori. But that's a little bit about the gun that I've got in front of me. So with that said, this is Scott signing off with the Average Joe Armory. As always, we love doing the research, we love shooting the video, and we love sharing it with all of you guys. If you guys do have any other information on the Superposed that you'd like to share that I didn't cover, please take the time to put in the comments. I love reading those, our viewers love reading those, and overall we can all learn together. If you like this kind of content, please help support the channel. Please like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you can get notifications of all of our future content. With that being said, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.